Today, we're going to be taking a look at the things that I look for when I'm buying a trial laptop. So with Black Friday and Cyber Monday having just passed, we've been inundated with deals, and that's probably going to continue to happen for the next month until we pass the holiday season. And it's very tempting for people to look at some of the bargains that are to be had in terms of laptops and think, I can probably just pick one of those up and bring those to my next trial. But I'm going to caution you against doing that, and also at the same time go over the things that I typically look for. Now, the reason why I'll caution you against picking up like a Black Friday deal or a Cyber Monday deal in terms of getting your next trial laptop, because they're not going to give you deals on the best machines that they have out there. Not that you necessarily need the best machine available. For example, this is a laptop that I used for years in terms of hot seating trials. I ran Trial Director on it. It's a laptop from 2012. It's a Toshiba Protege or Portage. I can't remember. It was a weird spelling. It wasn't Protege. I think it was Portage. I bought it in 2012. It's probably the third laptop I ever bought once I had started this business. And it came in with a dual core i5 Intel processor, 8 gigs of RAM. And since then, I did upgrade it to a 256 gigabyte SSD, so I've bumped up the specs on it. But if you look at a lot of the deals that you're getting these days, yes, the chips and all the components are newer, but the horsepower is about the same as that 2012 laptop. And if you think about it, it'd be like going to your next big 6 or 7 figure jury demand trial with something that's older than your car, or the same age as an iPhone 4 or a Samsung Galaxy S3. And if that makes you feel uncomfortable, it should. And so here's the things that I typically look for when I'm looking for a laptop. And the top 3 categories are the processor, the RAM, and the hard drive. And so in terms of processor, that's kind of the brain power of the laptop. What I'm looking for is an Intel chip. I'm sure AMD makes really great stuff, but I personally have had great experiences with Intel. I like Intel chips, and the Core i7 series is what I look for. A lot of times you're going to get the Ultrabook version chip, which is a little bit less powerful, but takes up a lot less electricity and resources. That's okay. It's going to be strong enough to still power most of the stuff that you're going to need in your trial, if not all of the stuff that you're going to need. I would prefer if it's a quad-core processor. Chips can have a number of cores. That's kind of like mini brains within the brain, if you want to think of the processor as the brain of the computer. And 4 cores is better than 2 for a lot of the software that you're going to use. And so the more horsepower, the better, kind of is the way to think about it. Core i3 is something that I would stay away from. The mobile or the M3 chips I would also stay away from. Those are in some of your tablets and slates, the really, really small devices. Yes, you're going to get fantastic battery life out of it. Looking on the internet for picking up your email, that's going to be just fine on it, but some crucial applications that you're going to be using in the courtroom, like Trial Director, OnQ, those are going to struggle, and even PowerPoint to an extent, depending on what you've got running in your PowerPoints. The next thing that I'm going to look for is the RAM. And the RAM is, the way I think of it, is the ability for your computer to do multiple things at the same time without getting bogged down. And so what I look for is a minimum of 8. 4, I don't even think you can get a lot of computers with 4 gigs of RAM in it anymore. If you think about it, 4 gigs of RAM is what's in most phones these days anyway. So you want more than 4. And 8 is, I would say, a minimum. 16 is what I prefer, and 16 gigs of RAM was what I'm buying for my laptops these days. So that's something that I would push you towards. Yes, it's going to be a little bit more expensive, but the courtroom is where you're probably going to be doing the most things at the same time, and you don't want things to crash or things to get bogged down. And so give yourself a little bit of extra headroom there and get the 16 gigs of RAM if you can. The third thing that I look for is the hard drive space. And now there's 2 things that I look for on hard drive. It's how much can it store and how fast can it get stuff back to you. And so those are the 2 ways to think about hard drive. So in terms of storage, it's how many photos or videos, or in the case of a trial laptop, how many PDFs, exhibits, video depositions can you fit on a laptop at one time. That's important. I would say you would need at least 250 gigabytes if it's a trial laptop only. If it's something that you're also going to take with you to do work and have multiple case files on it, sync it with your file management system at the office, you're going to need at least 500 gigabytes or a half a terabyte of storage. But for a trial laptop, most of our laptops are trial laptops only, so we get away with 250 gigabytes. The other thing to think about when you're thinking about hard drives is the speed at which the hard drive works. So let's think of it in terms of the library, for an example, right? You might have a gigantic library that can hold all the volumes of books ever written in the world. But if you have a really slow librarian getting those books for you, it doesn't really matter how many books you have, does it? It's just going to take forever and become unusable. So you want to hold enough amount of books, and you want to have a fast librarian that can go and get the books for you and bring it back. I'd say, for bang for the buck, getting a solid state hard drive compared to a spinning hard drive, which is the older kind that was in laptops that we used to get, and the kind of laptops that are typically for sale on Black Friday and Cyber Monday deals. Switching from the spinning old-fashioned hard drives to the new solid-state drives, they don't have spinning parts to it, that is the biggest performance bang for buck increase that I think a person can experience. And so even just this laptop, when I bought it in 2012, it had a spinning laptop. I think it was like a 5400 RPM spinning hard disk drive. When I switched over to a 256 SSD, the thing just flew. It screamed, and it took a 3-year-old laptop and enabled me to use it for another couple of years, even when I got other laptops on top of that. So that's something that I definitely look for. Some other things that I look for besides those three main things is what kind of ports does it have. Typically, if you're thinking about using this for use in a courtroom, you want to at least have a VGA or an HDMI port. These days, you're probably going to get only an HDMI port, but you would like to have at least one of those two, plus another way of connecting, or whether that's an HDMI port plus a VGA port, or an HDMI port plus a different kind of port that can connect with an adapter to the kinds of cables you're looking for, whether it's mini display port, mini HDMI, or a USB-C. You want two ways of connecting your laptop to a projection system, just in case that first one doesn't work for whatever reason. Other thing that I like to have, but you don't need to have for a trial laptop, is for it to have discrete graphics. Now, we talked about processors and we talked about RAM. Those are different ways of computing power. There's another one called video graphics card memory that can be a separate chip that you can have. A lot of gaming laptops and gaming desktops have these very powerful kind of extra chips that are used for very specific tasks. In the courtroom, you typically don't need it because I don't think OnCue is graphics card accelerated. They say Trial Director is graphics card accelerated, but I'm not so sure about that, at least in terms of my real world testing. And so I don't think you need it if all you're doing is hot seating. But most hot seaters also have to do a fair amount of video editing, and a lot of video editing software does take significant use of external graphics. So if it's something that you're going to be doing a lot of, that's also something that you might be looking for. And another thing that I like to have, almost love to have, but don't necessarily need to have, is a number pad. And you guys have seen me in some other videos in terms of how I like to set my hands apart, where I have the mouse in one hand, the other hand on the number pad, so I can kind of do two things at the same time and pull things up more quickly. That's also something that is nice to have. A 15-inch screen is nice. I like to have just a 1080 screen. You don't need a 4K screen. You don't need it to be touch. Generally, I'm using my hand on the mouse and the keypad anyway, so I don't have to touch the screen. So other things that are nice, if you want them, fine. If you don't need to have them, then I say you could save a couple of bucks and go without those things. But overall, those are generally the things that I look for when I'm looking for a laptop. And kind of the last thing that I will kind of caution or make sure you guys think about when you're buying a laptop for the courtroom is, what does it look like? And I'm not trying to say you have to have the prettiest laptop out there, but you are going to be bringing this into a court of law and asking for money or defending against a large amount of money. And so what you want to do is not have something that's completely goofy. I recently, because I wanted to get a computer with a really powerful external graphics card, had to get a gaming laptop, and it had a huge logo on it that looked like a giant Decepticon logo, and it made all sorts of crazy noises when you booted it up. I figured out how to turn that off, and I put tape over the huge, gigantic logo. Ultimately, you don't want to do anything that's too distracting for the jurors. But that's basically it. If you have any questions about how to buy a laptop, or what are the kind of basic things that you absolutely need for a trial laptop, feel free to put them in the comments. I'd love to talk to you guys down there. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.